Welcome to America Now, a podcast where we take a deep dive into new topics every week with special guest stars. I'm Anna.
And I'm Gracie.
Today we'll be touching on an important topic, mental health in schools. Mental health has always been a hot topic and there's so much information out there on it. So we're going to break down a few key areas: the history of mental health, important parties and their roles, the current state of the issue, the current effect mental health is having on students, and the future of mental health in schools.
So first, I will be talking about the history of mental health services. During the Progressive Era, we saw local, state, and national reform that began in 1890. At this time, school-based mental health services started developing. Progressive Era school-based mental health merged four sets of factors: compulsory education and laws restricting child labor services, immigration and concerns about social order, urbanization and concerns about public health, and professional and scientific developments in psychology, social works, and education. So some progressive reformers thought mental health could address academic and behavior problems, but their failure to adapt the system was explained away on the basis of psychopathology or mental or behavior disorders. So children were treated at clinics outside of school before they could return. So from 1890 to 1930, a shift in social values caused the emergence of school psychology. At this time, people began to place a greater importance on children and not how they can contribute to the workforce. So compulsory schooling required students to attend school for a certain period of time because in 1890, less than 7% of children aged 14 to 17 were in school due to child labor services. Now in 1915, Arnold Jessel became the first person to hold the title of school psychologist. He was significant for three reasons. He associated the title school psychologist with the public school system. He identified a school psychologist as one who provides services to children, especially children with a mental disability, and he associated school psychologists as central to the placement of kids in special education settings. So by 1920, there were 100 school psychologists, and this grew from 0 in 1890 to 100 school psychologists 30 years later. Now that we've discussed the history of mental health in schools, I'm going to turn it over to Anna, who will be sharing about individuals involved and how they can help.
There are many important people involved in the mental health of students, so now we'll go over a few of them and break down their roles. So the first one we're going to go over is teachers. Teachers spend the most time with students, sometimes even more than parents. They are the first line of defense when it comes to checking in on a student's mental health. Some ways to do that include having weekly check-ins with students about both their in and out of school life. They also need to make an effort to get to know their students in order to create a safe space where students feel comfortable so they have someone to come to if they're struggling. Another thing teachers can do is have a day, typically towards the beginning of the year, where the school psychologists and counselors come into the classroom and explain what mental health resources the school offers and how they can help if they are needed. The teachers themselves also need to make sure to stay connected with the psychologists and counselors so there's always an open line of communication. A school psychologist's job is to help students with their mental health and to help them succeed academically, socially, emotionally, and behaviorally. The school's counselors is there to help with goal setting and creating plans of action to keep or get students back on track with their schooling. These staff members are there to aid in any sort of issue a student may have, so they are a very important resource in the school. It is important that they connect with students early in their school career, introduce themselves, and have check-ins. Forming those connections will make them a friendly face for students, so they are more likely to come to them if they are struggling. No one will feel comfortable sharing deeply personal struggles with a complete stranger, so even if a few small interactions could make a student comfortable enough to come with them, and it will be worth it. The student is obviously a very important part in their own mental health. Students should make sure they are aware of all resources their school offers regarding mental health, whether they find that out through paying attention during the school psychologist presentations or seeking out the resources themselves. A student should also do their best to try and find at least 1 to 2 adults in the school that they feel comfortable sharing personal information and struggles with. I know it can be hard, but having a support system both in and out of school can make all the difference. Even if you never need to go to the adult because of the mental health struggle, it is always good to know that you have someone in your corner that is ready and willing to help in any way possible. The principal is quite possibly the most important person when it comes to a school's mental health resources. The principal needs to allocate funds to mental health professionals and resources that students can use. They can also create mental health awareness days 1 to 2 a year that share what resources the school offers with students. Another very important thing principals should do is listen to the teachers, students, and psychologists. Do surveys, get their opinions and input on the resources that are available and any others that could potentially be added. While the principal may not be directly talking to students about their mental health all the time, they do have the control to provide people that do. Now that we have taken a look at the history of mental health in schools and important people involved, we want to bring in a few specialists in the field to dive a little deeper. I have Jada Brown here with me to discuss the current state of mental health in schools.
Hi everyone. To unpack the current state of mental health, I will explain new laws that have been implemented and the shortage of psychologists in school. Today, schools are implementing new rules to support mental health. One major improvement in schools in Illinois is that students will soon be able to take up to 5 mental health days off in 2022. A law signed by Illinois Governor Pritzker last month will allow for 5 excused absences from schools without the need of a doctor's note, beginning in January. The Illinois bill states that students who take more than 2 of the approved mental health days should be referred to the appropriate school support services. Students who take mental health days will also be given the opportunity to make up missed work. Students in Oregon are already allowed to take up to 5 mental health days, and similar laws have been proposed in Florida, Utah, and other states. Montgomery County in Maryland has also added caring for mental health as an excused absence from school. The USA Story reported that as the society continues to increase the importance of addressing mental health as a part of healthcare, we must ensure that our students have the ability to address issues they are dealing with. This is a statement from State Senator Robert Marquardt after the bill passed the Senate. This bill removes the stigma and allows students to prioritize their mental health and stability. This law applies to all public schools students from the ages 6 to 17. Currently, there is a critical shortage in school psychology, both in terms of practitioners and in the availability of graduate education programs, and faculty needs to train the workforce necessary to keep up with the growing population. The National Association of School Psychologists recommends a ratio of 1 school psychologist per 500 students in order to provide comprehensive school psychology services. Current data estimates a national ratio of 1 to 1,200. However, great variability exists among states, with some states approaching the ratio of 1 to 5,000. Shortage can include both an insufficient supply of qualified school psychologists and school psychologists from diverse backgrounds, graduate faculty, and qualified practical and internship supervisors, as well as insufficient numbers of positions within districts to meet the needs of students. This shortage may be highlighted by President Joe Biden, and his team is currently in the process of trying to hire trained professionals to be working in schools.
Thank you, Jada. Next, we'll be discussing the current effect of mental health on students/teachers in their education with our specialist, Emma.
Mental health has always been an issue both students and teachers have had to face. Because of COVID, teachers have had to change their entire teaching process to online, and students have been confined to laptops for their education as well as socialization. Since the closure of schools and transitioning from in-person to online, mental health has heightened the effects on students and teachers. Students and teachers are continuing to feel the pressure of their mental illnesses and the effects it is having on their education, environment, and personal life. For students, having to cope with the impact of mental illness through their developmental transitions from childhood to adolescence can severely interfere with growing cognitive processes that are needed in the academic environment. These cognitive processes that are being interfered with by mental health issues can severely affect later educational achievement. Students who are battling any type of mental illness can feel as though they are trapped inside a bubble from the outside world. If students' mental health is left untreated, issues with social skills and executive functioning skills can become reduced or impaired while there are still mental health concerns. These kinds of issues have caused students to have trouble making friends at school and having their own outlet to discuss any problems they may be facing on their own. For teachers, balancing a classroom and their own mental health can create a very slippery slope. Teaching can be an emotionally draining profession. There have been recent studies related to struggles teachers have gone through due to new instructional challenges from COVID-19. In the teaching profession, a report done by CDC and Health and Human Resources reported that 27% of teachers reported symptoms related to clinical depression, and 37% of teachers self-reported signs of generalized anxiety symptoms. Since the pandemic, roughly 53% of teachers have had thoughts of leaving their teaching jobs. Studies have concluded that some of the most common stressors that can either affect or bring on mental health issues for teachers are negative portrayals of teaching as a job, the salary of a teacher, and uncertainty with expectations relating to their teaching job. Unfortunately for teachers, their outlets for discussing mental health related issues are not as prominent as student resources. The high demands of teaching can truly cause future issues for teachers and their mental health. It's just not discussed as much.
I think it's important to state that the future of this issue is in our hands. Students and teachers need options that are provided outside of school. School districts have been discussing introducing more mental health days for schools. This allows students and staff to have a break from daunting tasks every day, life in the educational environment. Collaboration with outside mental health professionals and organizations that provide free services for students and teachers can be utilized during times when school is not in session.
I think another great option is technology. Since technology is a prominent resource in schools and the world in general, embracing technology is a key resource for helping the future issues of mental health. Schools can implement anonymous discussion boards where students and teachers can write about current issues they may see happening. Helpful resources can also be added as an outlet for students and teachers who are not comfortable sharing to their peers.
There's actually a great resource that has been implemented in many schools for staff, which is called Impero Backup. It's a website that teachers and staff can write about concerns they're having with students. From there, teachers and staff can collaborate and resolve issues they may be observing with students in their classrooms.
If you or someone you know is struggling with mental health, do not be afraid to reach out and ask for help. There are plenty of resources and people willing to listen.